Little early morning recording for us.
Yeah, it's yeah, we're afternoon people, but doing it in the morning this time, changing it up.
I say early morning, it's 10 a.m.
I know, yeah. It's like I slept until like 8 this morning, so it does feel early for me still.
I got up and I had a doctor's appointment at 8. And so I had to wake up at like 6:45 because our youngest was hungry. So I gave him some milk.
Mhm.
And then I was like, well, I'm just going to get to the doctor early. And like I got there before everyone that like even works there. And I decided I want all my appointments to be the first one because like you're the only thing you're waiting on is the doctors to like start their day. You're not waiting on them to like finish up with anyone else.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's what I do when I take my car in for service. It's always like, what's your earliest appointment? And it gets it out of the way, and then they do it right away, and you don't have to wait for any other thing that went over. It's like scheduling projects in software, right?
The exact same.
You want the first client project if you're hiring someone.
I wish I was like an early morning go getter because like I always feel great when I like get going, but I can never get out of bed to commit to get
Mm.
going.
Yeah, see, I have this like I really enjoy coding late at night or early in the morning, but those conflict with each other. So if I stay up till 1 in the morning working, then I don't want to get up at 5 in the morning and work. But I also do like if I go to bed early, waking up early and coding in the morning. I guess maybe I just like working when everyone else is sleeping.
I do like that. I used to be late night guy, um, but then since my kids get up like a decent hour,
Yeah.
I go to bed and then I try to wake up early so I can work on my side projects before I start the day at
Yeah,
work.
that's good. I like that. I when I was like freelancing and consulting and stuff, like if I spent my morning hours when I was like fresh and kind of most I could think the clearest in the morning, and if I spent that on my own projects, that would at least help me get through that stuff because after working on annoying client projects that I didn't like and weird decisions and things, I quickly was like, yeah, I don't feel like working on my own stuff after this. And that really helped to like work on my own stuff first and make it the priority. I think that's a good move.
Speaking of your own stuff, you have somebody working with you on a Hatchbox. Any
Yeah.
exciting updates from Hatchbox land?
Let's see. Steve and I have been working on. Well, see, this is the thing. We are working on integrating AWS RDS and Elasticache and DigitalOcean's managed databases. Um, and AWS is just complicated, so that's taken a while to figure out. Like, they have weird requirements for things. Like, if you create an RDS instance, you have to have it in two VPCs and two availability zones, even if that's not what your database. If it's only in one, it still requires two, and things like that you have to like learn the hard way because you try and create the smallest, cheapest one, and then it's like, nope, sorry, you need this extra configuration always. And then we're like, okay, I guess. And then the DigitalOcean side of things, which most of the Hatchbox customers seem to be using DigitalOcean just because for simplicity and pricing perspective, it kind of wins. But they don't actually have an official integration with their API for the managed databases in the gem. So we forked the gem a few weeks ago and we're implementing that. And then we were like, wait, we should ask them if they're is this something they're just doing internally and haven't published on GitHub yet? And they were like, no, but we'll add it to our next sprint planning meeting. And I don't think we've heard anything yet about that. And we kind of have our own version of that, but it's not perfect. And then there's also learning how that gem works, because they have this concept of like, well, when you're integrating with an API, like you just get JSON back usually, and so you convert that to a Ruby hash, and that's pretty straightforward. But this gem takes it a step further and has these mapping things, so it will create like an actual Ruby object, like a database class, um, and it converts the JSON and the Ruby hash over to actual attributes and things on that. So we just had to go through extra hoops to do that. And as we're doing it, we're like, one confusing thing about all these databases is they call them a managed database or something. And then inside of those, there's also databases. So it's like you have your Postgres database server or cluster, and then inside of that, you can have multiple databases. So we were like, actually, we need to figure out a good naming scheme for this, because we want to separate out clearly that like you can have a DigitalOcean managed database for Postgres, but you could also have 10 databases inside of that. Um, and so we were like, yeah, now we need to take another step back and figure out how we want to do that. And, decide if we want to roll with our naming scheme for the API mapping that we did, or wait and see what they call some of the things. Because there was like, you have users on DigitalOcean, but then you also have like a Postgres database user. And we weren't entirely sure what we wanted to call those and what DO or DigitalOcean might call them when they build the integration or whatever. So, and we're a little stalled on some of that stuff. But, it's like just we're gung ho about it and kind of started the project. And we're like, oh, we'll integrate with the API without putting enough thought into like, how is this actually going to work ahead of time? And so now we're taking a step back and kind of like, oh, let's figure out what we want the interactions in our app to be like first, and then decide that too, because um, we realized too, like your region for your server might be in NYC1, but you might accidentally create a database in some other region, which AWS loves to cost you a lot of money if you do that stuff, transferring things um, data wise, and then DigitalOcean might not be able to, connect on the private network between those and things like that. So it's become much more complicated than I was like, oh yeah, let's add support for this when we originally started. I was much more optimistic than I am now.
What's the process like if you start on Hatchbox with like just your own Postgres instance on your own cluster, and
Yeah,
then
like
you want to
internal.
yeah, and then you want to go to like a managed DigitalOcean database? Like, what's that look like?
Well, we don't do the data migration for you right now, so you would have to do that. But honestly, like for now, you all this stuff is still supported. You just have to create it yourself on DigitalOcean and then set your database URL to that,
Oh,
and you're
easy
good to
enough.
go. Yeah, so like this is just kind of a convenience feature to help you create those, and that's about it, which has become way more complicated. And now I remember why I, put this off originally, because it was like, well, there's way more to this than I thought. So but it's good because it's forcing kind of like a better understanding of how we should design this. Because Hatchbox started truly simple, where it was like, we'll spin up a single server that does everything and you can deploy apps to it. When you get into like, we have a load balanced cluster, and potentially we have a database cluster with like Postgres replicas and stuff like that, it's, you know, a lot more complex. And so we may evolve our stuff along with that too, like the internal. Um, right now, like you can create a Postgres server and you just tag the server with, I want to install Postgres on here, and it starts it up. But we don't have replicas or anything else. And so it's maybe making it so that we will split that out. Because originally I just wanted it so you filled in your Git information and you said this app should run Postgres, and it would just go create a Postgres database and clone your app and deploy it. And, in one button click, you could have a running app, which was cool. But there's a reason why like Heroku lets you create your app and then you have to manually add your databases step by step afterwards because, well, it's hard to predict those, things. So we're going to probably split things out into a multi-step process as well that, we'll do those things one by one instead, which should just make it a little bit more reliable. So yeah, it's big changes.
It's cool though. I'm looking at the DigitalOcean stuff. I mean, you can pretty much with managed databases and then block storage. Like, I don't know, they have a lot of really cool offerings that I haven't even looked at.
Yeah, and they have a lot of downtime with spaces or performance issues, but like you have your S3 competitor, so they have basically all of the core stuff that you would want from AWS, and they're competing directly with that. And Spaces is like AWS or S3 API compatible, which is cool. So like if you want to use DigitalOcean Spaces with active storage, you just set it to the AWS config and use the AWS S3 gem, and you just change the endpoint to point to DigitalOcean instead of AWS. That's it.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, pretty neat. So, that makes a real easy transition from one to the other if you're wanting to do that.
I always, whenever I like go to do S3 with like active storage or paperclip, any of those things, I always get confused on like the roles and like making
Yeah.
things publicly available. Like I always screw it up. It always takes me way too long.
Yeah, and their policies and stuff. Yeah. Um Something I just thought of was the other day. So, as people know, we've been working on Stripe SCA stuff for quite a while. The other day, I was finishing up some changes to Jumpstart, and probably my issue has been like I'm jumping between Hatchbox and Jumpstart and the PageM and Go Rails, and I just can't like focus on Stripe for long enough. Um, but the other day, I asked you about basically when you go to subscribe for a subscription with no trial with a SEA required card. I was doing it so we use that setup intent or something, and then you you collect a card, you go through the SCA approval, and then you redirect to when it tries to actually create the subscription, it's going to ask for SCA again. And I asked you about that, and it was like, this seems kind of wrong, right? Like that is going to ask for authentication 2 times on this test card, and you told me like, yeah, don't use that on the original step there. And yeah, I ended up talking to Stripe, somebody in the Stripe IRC channel about this, and realized like what's gone from a single process for Stripe for collecting a credit card has turned into like this 3 or 4 different flow thing now for SCA, which is crazy. So like if you're doing a single um, purchase like on Amazon, you put in your card and you do a payment intent and you say the amount that they want to pay, and then the bank approves that and whatever with the SCA modal. But then with subscriptions, I guess you have to do 2 separate things if you're doing a subscription with a trial and without a trial. So if you have a trial, then you use the setup intent because you're going to pay in 7 days or something. And then if you don't have a trial, you just collect the card without doing SEA, like you told me. And then when the subscription fails, it will give you the payment intent for that original payment, and then you can ask the customer to do authentication because now you have a payment intent. And I thought that was just like kind of ridiculous that we have to deal with all that stuff now just to collect payments. Like it kind of sucks.
Yeah, just give me sources. and then
Yeah.
let
Or
me do.
just like please give me one option that I can use for this whole process. And I think this setup intent maybe is okay with the way that we were going to do it. Like they have a test card that like fails every single time you do anything with it, for the worst case scenario. And it seems really unlikely that you 1 minute approve your credit card to be used for a subscription and then go next minute try and charge that. It seems like it would be unlikely that would fail, but maybe it's a fraud detection thing too that they would do. But I couldn't believe, how complicated payments has become for any EU companies. Like, luckily, we don't have to deal with this in the US yet, but I could see this coming over here at some point. And basically, Stripe says, you want your payments to be compatible with this in the future. Like, this is probably the best future proof way to implement Stripe. And it is ridiculous. It sucks. It's probably going to, stifle a lot of developers for, you know, building payments into their app. And, maybe you'll use some other company that just wraps Stripe and makes it easier for you. I don't know. It was not a fun experience, but I think I'm finally just about done. I need to do that setup intent for subscriptions with a trial, but now I have to check if you have a trial on your plan or not, which is really dumb.
I wonder. I don't know that those services that wrap Stripe. I don't know that they would be that much easier to implement.
Well, I wonder because there are some of these things like, I know Tyler Tringus on Twitter said one of the companies he invested in was like a subscription management thing for products. So, like, if you didn't want to do any of the payments yourself, you would just, I think it probably works similar to Stripe Checkout. And this is probably the reason why you'll see a lot more people use Stripe Checkout, because you can just kind of redirect to Stripe and let them deal with all this stuff. So you don't have to know the difference between a subscription with a trial and without. That's my guess. Um, and I think they're going to be just like more PayPal kind of workflows when people are checking out, like redirect somewhere else, and your app doesn't really have to know too much about the payment process at all. Um, it kind of sucks because I always prefer to have payments, on the website. It just feels more professional that way. But it certainly seems like redirecting away to another service will be more common, or the main way that things work in the future, which is a little annoying. Or maybe it's like an iframe that gets embedded that's kind of the same thing. I don't know. You guys have been doing some PayPal stuff that's been equally painful, haven't you?
Yeah, we are. We are not doing it anymore.
Oh, it's gone down that far down the deep end, huh?
Yeah, we're essentially releasing a help doc to explain why, but the context for it is that we spent a lot of time trying to implement this, and like we accept PayPal for just like checking out for orders, but trying to do it with like payment plans and memberships, like the way PayPal works, it's just not a good user experience for anyone, for us, for our creators, for our customers. So
Yeah, and the payment plans are like just a 6 month subscription kind of thing, right? Like it ends after a few months that you, instead of paying, all up front or
yeah,
forever, you're just kind of paying a high monthly rate or something for
yeah,
just a short time.
yeah. The creators set that, so like if they have $1,000 product, they can be like, or you can pay, 6 months at $200, and it'll end up, costing you twelve
Uh-huh.
hundred dollars, but you don't have to pay all that up front. So
Yeah, and I wonder how many of those. It feels like something that a lot of people would do or want to do, the payment plan, but it also, from the business side, seems like, well, you definitely don't want to let them download any of your content until they've fully paid or something, because you know payments fail really often, and someone could get access to the whole course and then pay for the 1 month and then be done or whatever.
Yeah, it's definitely a risk. We like when a payment fails, we track how many times it fails, and after like 3 failed payments, we tell the creator like, hey, like this isn't going through. Like, do you want to cut off access, things like that. Like we put it in their hands to figure out what they want to do, but we try to make them well
Yeah,
aware of what's happening.
that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, it's just tough, and it definitely makes sense as like a risk you may or may not be willing to accept for your business, just because there's no way to enforce it, and there's you're going to lose a lot of customers if you don't offer that option. If you have a $5,000 course or even $1,000 or whatever, that definitely makes sense. So yeah, that's a tricky situation to build, like as a developer and as a business. It's interesting.
Yeah, I did like payment plans was one of my first projects, and it was easy is not the right word, but it was still like it was pre SCA Stripe, and so it wasn't like the worst to build. SCA made it a little trickier because it's like midway through a payment plan, somebody's card could require authentication.
Yeah, that which is the worst, right?
It's so awful. So I had to introduce a workflow that's like, well, it didn't fail, but we need you to go here and re-authenticate your card. And
Yeah,
it
and
poses the same risk of like they just might
right,
start paying.
right. And well, it's complicated too because like you can subscribe to a brand new subscription, and like if your code doesn't look for the incomplete status on a Stripe subscription, then you could accidentally give them a free subscription because their first payment didn't go through, and you have to like now display a banner that's like, hey, your last payment didn't go through, your subscription's now past due or whatever, and you have to put in your card information to continue, which might enforce a little bit better of like handling failed payments inside of apps. But for the sheer amount of work that I've done to get Jumpstart rewritten for this and upgrading the page app, like it is crazy. It sucks.
Yeah, we so like our creators can create like membership subscriptions for their customers. And so like we had to introduce a new workflow, like a new status that's like, well, we created your subscription and it exists, but you can't access anything until you go to this page and authenticate your card. And then like
Hmm.
we have to wait. So what we do is we keep you on that page, listen for the webhook, and then send an action cable broadcast to redirect you.
Okay, yeah. So I don't have that right now. I just have like your payment was successful and a go back button. So in theory, the webhook should come through before they click that. Um, but yeah, and that's how Laravel Cashier does it too. Um, but there's also like I realized that page that I have with the confirmation, um, and you guys probably have this too, where it's like in some situations you'll have like this incomplete payment that you need their credit card on, and other ones you already have the card and you just need to do authentication. And so sometimes I was having it like you had to put your credit card in again, even though we didn't actually need it. We just needed to display the Stripe modal for SCA. So I had to upgrade some JavaScript stuff for that too. But the JavaScript used to be like user click submit, we'll tokenize the card, we'll send it to the server, and we're done. And now it's like, okay, well, do we have a setup intent? Do we have a payment intent? Does this require SCA? Does it require a new payment method? And now your JavaScript is like branching 4 different ways, and so is your, server side too. It feels like, and I it feels like it's just going to stifle a lot of businesses or new software startups, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. Somebody asked me about payments at work the other day. I was like, Hope to never think about this ever again.
Yeah, it sucks. I was working on tests for the PageM, and Ruby 2.7 Preview 2 came out, and so I was like, I'll just toss that in my CI suite and have it run against that too. And I guess it is not currently compatible with Rails 5.2 because the gem is Rails 5.2 and higher, and we may have to drop that and just use 6 for this new version or something if we want to support 2.7. But it seems like the Rails 5.2 thing was modifying a frozen string, and then 2.7 was doing like, I forget, like frozen strings by default and something. I forget all the changes, but yeah, it was like, barfing on that. And I was like, okay, so just adding this new Ruby version is now going to, have some sort of backwards incompatibility, which most of the Ruby versions for the last few years have been, really good at backwards compatibility. So I was kind of surprised to run into that, but
Yeah, I just saw the Ruby Weekly email that came in, and it's talking about 2.7 Preview 2, and I just opened the pattern matching slide deck. So
yeah, and this is, I guess, one of the last. Well, Ruby 3x3 is supposed to come out when? And I thought, like 2.7 is trying to get some more of those things just prepared for the 3x3 release that happens and
I
whatever.
feel like the goal is 3 in 2020, but I don't remember. It's been a hot minute.
Yeah, I can't remember either, but man, that would be awesome to have that. It sounds like there's some pretty good improvements and stuff in 2.7 behind the scenes, if I remember right. But I need to look into it a little bit more. It's just been hard to keep up with that, with everything else that is going on.
I've been action texting and action mailboxing, and
Yeah, that's exciting. So, what have you been building with that?
uh my I don't know if I talked about it. So like two of my apps need like just the most basic customer support. So I started building a thing just to do that, because like most of the stuff out there is kind of enterprisey, or like big business, and my little projects just aren't. So I use Action Text to do like the knowledge based content, and I was surprised at how easy it is to use. I guess I wasn't surprised, but like before Rails 6 came out, I was like, I don't need either of these things, and then I'm using them now. So
Yeah. Well, I think the honestly, like I really love Action Mailbox. Like that was a feature that just I don't know, like every app tends to, if you're sending emails, you probably want to also receive inbound emails. Like it just is kind of natural a lot of times if you have any sort of comment system. It's really convenient to be able to hit reply. Like we probably do that in GitHub pretty regularly, here or there. Um, I don't always use that feature if I want to see the context of the thread, but if it's just a quick reply when I'm on my phone, I don't have to log into the app, which is amazing. So I really like that being in there. And Action Text felt originally a little like redundant because there was things like HTML pipeline and your markdown stuff that was really common, but the ability to embed links to other things and not do like your own custom text parser and replace it with HTML is like really really nice. So I like that. It's just a little bit more complicated to like embed something because you have to have it as a signed global ID, which means you have to build some JavaScript and a JSON endpoint to actually, go embed those attachments. But I really think that long term, they're going to be great features to have in Rails.
Yeah, I struggled with Action Mailbox. The Rails guides aren't very robust in terms of Action Mailbox. So I ended up just looking at the gem itself because Rails is pretty good about like documenting code. And that helped me a lot. Like I ended up for routing for Action Mailbox, like I read that you can just define a class and as long as it responds to like match question mark, I was like, oh, that's way more
Yeah.
I don't know the word I'm looking for. It's more elegant to me than like trying to fill a bunch of regexes in the application mailbox.
Yeah. Well, there was something in there too that was like, you know that we normally want to pull out a ID or something from these emails, and then that way we know which thread to like put this comment on. And the regex doesn't, I mean, you can do captures and stuff in your regex, but it just doesn't pass it anywhere as a parameter, which I thought was really annoying. So you have to kind of parse it twice. And there will probably be an update to that at some point, and I would love to contribute that if I ever get the time. Um, but that's like such a common feature. It's like you know which bucket to go start processing it with, but now you have to like reprocess it. It seems strange.
Yeah, I ended up building so like these classes are also responsible for like generating the email address with the ID. So like it's kind of like it contains all the things it needs to know, and it's like class methods to be like, get me the conversation from this email address and things like that.
Mm-hmm. That's
So
nice. So you have the generator for the email with the special format in the same place that parses and confirms that that's correct and matching. That's
yeah,
nice.
it's like a single source of truth, and I don't know. It's not perfect, and I'm still trying to figure out like what the hell I'm doing, but it's
Sounds like
fun.
a good blog post.
I haven't written one of those in a long time.
Now's your chance to commit publicly on a podcast. You
But
even jumped for that one very fast.
yeah, but it's been I don't know. It's been fun. I there's just a lot of like there's a lot of things I've never thought about because like I've never processed email that comes back into an app.
Yeah. So
It's just
are you trying to strip out the like quoted text from all the 15 previous emails?
yeah. See, I haven't even gotten that far because the way I've been testing it is using Rails as conductor.
Okay, yeah.
So like you have like a screen that will will like route inbound emails. So like you have a form and it's like from to
Yeah, and it's like very much faked and simplified compared to like what Gmail will respond with.
right.
Yeah.
I kind of want to use not use. I've been looking at Thoughtbot had a gem for it, and I saw that you did a video on it.
Griddler?
Yeah, and like that seems like a good library because it even has like a separator that's like reply above this line, and that is what it uses to know everything above the line is new text.
Yeah. That you can pretty easily build on your own, and it's probably one of the main features that you would want to pull out of there because for the most part Griddler is like the same thing. um, it mostly was for handling the inbound emails and stuff. um, they do have some of that parser thing built in. The one thing that's really tough is if you want to keep any of the HTML formatting, good luck. It makes it just that much harder to parse and split and do any of that. And you'll even see this if you're so. One fun thing I would recommend doing is um, reply to a GitHub issue by email, reply to a Basecamp, thread by email, and whatever other apps you can find, do that and see how they parse it. Because like on GitHub, they have some separator like that, but like Gmail loves to do the like on such and such date, so and so said this, and it's like then the quote begins, and you'll always see that like line show up on GitHub or whatever app, and then some are smart enough to be able to parse that out, but then that language is also translated. So if someone replied in French, or their main language is French or something, then it's going to be like on this date, but just in French instead. So it becomes very hard to actually parse that piece out. And I think a lot of apps are like, screw it. We'll do the reply above this line thing instead.
Yeah, I'm still very early in it, but it's cool.
Yeah, it's really fun. I think it feels like a feature that almost every app should think about from the very beginning.
Yeah, it's fun. I
Yeah.
like that action text is like action or active storage or whatever the A word is, and that like it has a separate table.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah, you're
I
not you're not doing like you're not doing a polymorphic association, but it sort of works the same way because it's a global ID. Um,
yeah,
which is a good question. Like, I don't really know what why they tend to global IDs over a polymorphic association. Like, it's one less column, but you also can't search on that stuff, if I remember right, as easily. I haven't actually looked to see the contents of the global ID column or whatever, but yeah.
I actually think I used PG search and was able to bring content in as a association and search on it.
Yeah. So then maybe they're plain text or something. Yeah, I'm not sure. I need to look into that. I've like just run the migrations and never actually looked to see what it's storing in those tables. Because the one thing is like if you do assign global ID, then it's those with your attachments and action text get really potentially scary if you ever leak your secret key base and have to rotate it. There's like no way for you to easily convert those signed, um, those signatures over to the new secret key base. So that's a little scary to me to rely heavily on just yet with no good solution in case you ever needed to rotate that. But that's going to like also destroy all your sessions for cookies and things too. So it's definitely not um, an easy thing to transition no matter what. But that is one hesitation I do have on the way that it works right now. But I understand that like if you're embedding an attachment to some other record in your database, you need that to be signed because if someone tampered with it and just put like let's link to the admin's user account or something and get data from that could be bad. So I understand the security reason for that, but it just seems like a not an easy way to rotate that ever.
Yeah. Anything else exciting before we call it a day?
I'm trying to think. Oh, I published in case anyone's interested, I did publish a blog post last night on, and I sent you this too the other day. The the capybara helpers for Stripe elements, which people have used very heavily to test Stripe in a system test. I've added a couple helpers to that to handle the Stripe SEA modal, which has come in real handy for being able to run tests against like Jumpstart Pro and then make sure that like a subscription that goes through with a regular card just works, and then one that goes through with the SCA actually goes to the correct page and prompts you and all that stuff. So I wrote a blog post on Go Rails if anyone's interested on that. So give that a look. But yeah, not a whole lot else going on. Major code things recently. Just lots of wrapping up payments, and can't wait to finally be done with that. It's really not going to be done, I guess, because I'll get this finished and then I want to try and record the Stripe payments course again while this is all fresh in my mind, and kind of teach people how this stuff works. Because boy, the Stripe docs have not been good, and I think I would have paid for the course to go through this in a much easier to understand way. So, like, well, I guess I should do that and put the time into making that course or redoing it.
Yeah,
So,
now
yeah.
seems like the time.
Yeah, if I get to a point where I actually feel confident that I built all this stuff right, every time I get close, I'm like, actually, it's prompting me for this twice. That's not good. So yeah. So, anyways, yeah, I think that's it. I guess we will chat next week then, huh?
Yeah, maybe we'll even just wait and do it in person next week.
Oh yeah, I guess we could. That would be fun. So yeah, you'll have to remind me. I'll bring my microphone, and we might be able to sit across the table and
Those are all.
record this. That'd be fun. Sounds good. I will see you in Memphis, and like we used to do, and keep forgetting. If you liked this episode, you should go give us a rating on iTunes. That really helps, promote the podcast and help us keep doing this. So yeah, if you liked it, give us a review, and wherever else you might be able to review podcasts as well.
Sounds good. We'll see you.
Cool. See ya.